And thanks for watching Morning Live. Now, Black First, Land First say that they do not intend to appeal this week's decision by the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein, denying the party leave to appeal the decision to deregister it as a political party. Now, this follows an appeal that was lodged by the Freedom Front Plus, who said that the BLF's exclusion of on membership based on race was contrary to the Electoral Act. The BLF will discuss its way forward at the special policy conference at the end of this month. So to discuss this matter further, we're joined by Andile Mngxitama, who is the leader of Black First, Land First movement, and he joins us from our studios in Durban. Andile, good morning. Thanks for being with us here on Morning Live.
Good morning to you and good morning to your viewers.
So what's your immediate reaction to that decision by the Electoral Court? Did you expect it, or did you think that it may end up differently?
No, we anticipated this decision. As a consequence, we actually had planned this special policy conference to take matters into our own hands. The courts of this country has been very consistent in hostility towards our movement and being very biased. And so we were not going to allow ourselves to be controlled anymore by what we believe is a kangaroo court for white supremacy. The point of this decision really is that it makes the point that Black First, Land First will be making, that the whole South African constitutional dispensation which comes after 1994 is anti-black. I mean, the fact that a party of white supremacy, Freedom Front Plus, is able to go to, our institutions and says ban a blacks-only organization. Blacks only to address racism, colonialism, not to oppress anyone. A party that benefited from colonialism, apartheid, says it does not want a blacks-only organization, and our laws and our courts agrees with such a party. So that makes the case for Black First, Land First, that black people in this country are still not liberated. We need to organize ourselves and to bring a new dispensation, a new constitutional dispensation that puts black people first. Our argument has been made. We are a banned party. You talking as you speak to me. I have the revolutionary honor of being the first leader of a party banned by democratic order, only because we say put black people first.
So I take it, therefore, that you don't necessarily agree that your membership policy is in fact contrary to what the Electoral Act states.
Well, there's a big contestation, and we make the argument that the intention of the legislator could not have been that you stop a movement, a political movement that seeks to redress apartheid exclusion of black people. It could not have been. The reading of that clause have been very literal, and in fact are viewed to benefit a white interpretation, and therefore you have this situation where a white party is allowed to exist, Orania is allowed to exist, the AWB is allowed to exist, but a movement that says let us redress what has happened specifically to black people. Apartheid and colonialism are processes that affected a specific people, and those people are black people. And we say we are organizing ourselves on the basis of this reality to bring about change, and we are told no, sorry, you can't do that. So we're back to apartheid days really, where the liberation movement was banned.
Andile, do you not think this is perhaps a case of the way in which your policy has been phrased? And if you had perhaps phrased it differently, you would be allowed to remain registered as a political party. Do you not take that point?
It's an insult to black people, not just to Black First, Land First. I mean, we as black people need to take ourselves seriously. You can't have a situation where a openly racist party, look at their representative in parliament, look at what they represent, Freedom Front Plus, unless you are cognitively challenged, I'm avoiding to say stupid, you believe that it is an inclusive party that represent other interests than whiteness. It is an insult because this party says black people have no right to organize on the basis of their blackness, despite the fact that blackness is the organizing reality that excluded black people. It's just like women in a patriarchal society. Should we say women can organize as women to fight for their rights in a society that oppresses them specifically on the basis of women? This is the only point we're making. We are not going to allow the Freedom Front Plus and white sensibilities and mentally colonize black people to say, you must never say blacks first. You must not put black people first because that is racist. It is our burden as a revolutionary movement that follows Steve Biko to teach and agitate for black people first, so that this country can return to our hands. As we speak, no black person in this country can claim to be a citizen. In fact, 35,000 white people own 80% of the land. We as black people, only 3% of us, own the JSE. A white family, an ordinary white family in this country earns 6 times more than a black family. We can look at also unemployment, look at poverty. About 65% of us black people are poor. Only 5% of white people are in that situation. Why? Because of colonialism, because of apartheid, which benefited white people systematically and excluded black people. We are saying we want to address this matter, and our laws are saying, no, you can't do that on the basis of your blackness. So we are not going to stop the struggle. We see ourselves as continuing the revolutionary movement that was started by our forebears when white people arrived in this country. So we are going to go to this conference and look at options. But we are not going out of the political system. We're not going to make it easy for land thieves.
So let's talk to that, because you say you're going to go to conference, you're going to make it different. In as much as, yes, it was the Freedom Front Plus who actually raised the objection, the fact of the matter is it is the Electoral Court that made the decision based on the laws of this country. So are you willing to compromise on anything in this regard?
No, we're not going to compromise we're not going to compromise any position. The laws of this country need to be changed. Black First Land First says we want a constitution. We say we want a pro-black constitution. That's one of the things that we want to bring into the political arena of this country. A pro-black constitution which will firstly start by saying the country belongs to black people, and in fact it has been stolen from black people, and we need to get reparations over and above the fact that we need to get our land back. See, the reason why we are banned, quite frankly, is because Freedom Front Plus knows that Black First Land First is the only movement that can force the ANC and the economic freedom fighters, these parties who have already 2/3 majority in parliament, to address the land question. Will not give them rest. We'll make sure that we criticize them, we expose them, we push them, and our people will get land. And Freedom Front Plus, of course, represent land thieves, and that's why it's so terrified of the existence of Black First Land First, doesn't want us in the political arena. We are saying the laws of this country need to change to represent black people. Right now they don't represent us, and that is part of our revolutionary mission. And at this conference we're going to look at options to make sure that our revolutionary agenda remains, and our stance as a pro-black movement. We know even black people feel uncomfortable when you say pro-black. Why? Because colonialism did not just take land, but it also destroys the mind. And our people have internalized self-hatred. The fact that we can't love ourselves. The fact that we are uncomfortable to say this country belongs to us and black people must come first. It is our burden as a black consciousness movement to really educate and to organize and to insist on the fact that black people must come first in the black country.
What about the preamble of the Freedom Charter written into the constitution of this country that speaks to a South Africa that belongs to all who live in it? And I would imagine that many people actually support the key essence of your movement and what it stands for. However, there's also a strong feeling that despite all that you are espousing, all that is being said, there is a need for this country to unite. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, Robert Sobukwe left the ANC because of the Freedom Charters, particularly that clause that says the country belongs to all who live in it. It is a misnomer. Nowhere on earth have a colonized people declared that the land, the country belonged to them and the colonizer. Even long before the colonizer has ceded the land back to them. That was the Freedom Charter was written by white people, and that is why the constitution in this country is pro-white, taking the same logic of the Freedom Charter, which we reject. This country belonged to black people, was stolen from black people by white people, and white people have not even acknowledged the fact that apartheid and colonialism has affected black people the way we are. We live in townships, we're excluded. Our circumstances, including the fact that we must fight for education as black people, is a direct consequence of this white system of white people. So we reject that. Black people have to really come to terms with the fact that this country belong to us, but it is not in our hands. To say South Africa belongs to all who live in it, does it belong to black people? No, South Africa doesn't belong to black people. As we have said, 35,000 white people own 80% of the land. This country belongs to white people, not to black people. That is true even in the economic sense. It is true even if you look at the top management structure, who sits there? Over 70% are white people, white males who control the South African economy. So we are tenants in a country that is owned by white people. We have not resolved this big historical fact. And let us not talk about words. Let's look at the substance of our reality. Our reality is one of exclusion. And that's why we are the people who are suffering in a country with so much wealth.
How do you explain that in a country where the political power rests in black hands?
Exactly. That is part of the biggest challenge. The fact that our political order, if you look at Parliament, for instance, the majority of parties there are black parties. But these parties are in the pockets of the landowners. EFF and ANC are funded, controlled by landowners. Landowners are white people or those who own the means of production. As a consequence, they can't address the problems of black people. This is the unfortunate thing with when you have economic power, you control also the politics, unless, of course, those who are in the political arena are revolutionary, such as our movement. And because there's an understanding that our movement is revolutionary, will not compromise, will not be bought, doesn't care for Louis Vuittons and the Range Rovers. We want land and want freedom and dignity for our people. That is why we've been squeezed out from the political arena. That is the only reason Black First Land First is seen as a danger, because we really take seriously the black project and the black agenda and will not compromise on it. Yes, there is black majority in terms of normatively parliamentary representation, but that parliament is bought. Ask all these political parties where they get the millions and millions that they had used to campaign in the last elections. They got them from the same land owners. So we don't have a black representation in that parliament, and Black First Land First has been squeezed out consistently as a consequence of understanding that we represent in an uncompromising fashion the black agenda.
So what would be the role of white South Africans in a South Africa where black first, land first gets to rule, hypothetically speaking?
Well, we have nothing to say to white people. All white people can do, if they're serious, is to return the land that belongs to black people. They have not done so in the past 25 years. They have not even apologized in the past 25 years. What they are doing, they are forming organizations. They are forming their own universities. You know, even the Broeder Bond exists in this country. White people are simply refusing to acknowledge that there's been colonialism, there's been apartheid, and there's racism that continues and affecting black people negatively. We are not going to, therefore, surrender our agency to change our circumstances by caring about what white people think. If white people were real, we should not even have the liberation movement. They should have just themselves, amongst themselves, they had a parliamentary representation and said, no, let's give the country back to its rightful owners. They haven't done so. So we have nothing to say to white people except to say, return land which was stolen. If you don't, we are coming to take it.
But there's
That
government
is our
policy.
historical mission.
There's government policy to that effect to address the land question. So to what extent, you know, should the parties that make up government take responsibility for the fact that we haven't seen the sort of redress that you are talking to and advocating for?
Yes, absolutely. We must insist that we must expose the fact that the EFF and the ANC together have a two-third majority. And by the way, they've promised our people that they will amend the constitution to bring about land expropriation without compensation. They are not doing so because, as we say, they are in the pockets of those precisely who have stolen our land. But our struggle is really to those who have the land, those who stole our land, those who have created apartheid and are benefiting from apartheid and make sure that we're excluded. This is our primary responsibility, and all black people, we should not be divided on this question of returning the land to black people and addressing the legacies of colonialism and apartheid. I should not be sitting here justifying the existence of a black revolutionary movement that wants to address black problems, black challenges created by a white system. I should not be the one who is seen as racist when we are trying to address precisely a problem we did not create. It is frustrating and it is humiliating and it is angering that we as black people have to justify our existence. We have to justify why we need a blacks only organization in a racist country such as us, where racism was created by white people. It is shocking that some black people actually accept the status quo, that it is okay, we must pretend that there's unity. What kind of unity when the actual material circumstances of black people and white people in this country are so diametrically opposed? And this is not a God-created situation, it was a systemic creation by white people to make sure they have security at the expense of black people. Look at Sandton, look at Alexander as good examples of what we're talking about. Alexander, where our people are congested, it is a direct outcome of the life of comfort in Sandton. We as revolutionaries therefore have a duty to change the circumstance of our people. Sandton is not going to come and give Alexander what it deserves without a big fight. We are going to, this is what we are doing, putting a big fight, and the enemy understands. That is why our movement today is banned. We are being told we can't participate in the political process of this country because there is a fear that black people will see and hear our message and organize themselves and take themselves seriously, and as a consequence return the country to its rightful owners.
We are out of time, coming up to news time, but I have to ask you, they say he who alleges must prove. You say that the ANC and the EFF are in the pockets of white people. What proof do you have to that end?
The president of the country has been given R1 billion by white monopoly capital. In fact, the public protector has also confirmed this. The EFF, they take money from white monopoly capital. They take money from Adriano Mazzotti. I mean, the last elections, they must have spent about, we calculated 500 million. Where do they get that kind of money? So, I mean, I'm putting it out to them. Let them tell us how much they spend and where they got the money from.
And we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. Thanks so much for your time. Andile Mngxitama is the president of Black First, Land First movement, talking to us about the way forward following this week's decision by the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein to deny leave to appeal for the deregistration of their movement. And that brings us up to news time at 7 o'clock. Leanne standing by with the latest.